Hello, I am Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be debuting my Dungeon Defender tier list for all the legendary creatures currently available in Creature Quest. So, presently speaking, there are over 50 different legendary creatures currently available, and it can give you at least some variety as to what you want to populate your dungeon with. Now, the purpose of a tier list is to give you a quick reference guide as to the general overall strengths of said legendary creature. And just because this is a list that's compiled by myself, there is obviously the chance at error or bias. And because it is the very first tier list I have done for Creature Quest, it will possibly have a lot of shifting around in the next couple of weeks as adjustments need to be made. The hardest part is getting them all down onto a template and adhering to said template. So I will plan to release a tier list for offensive PvP as well as PvE, but for now this is just the Defender tier list from a dungeon PvP point of view. So, like I already mentioned before, there's a bit of fine print. You have to understand that, again, there is the chance for personal bias or error. That's what the comment section is for. If you feel like something is under or over evaluated, please let me know and we can discuss and maybe make shifts moving forward. Now, the ordering within each tier is not important. Basically, I just want to be showing that a creature is an S, and all the creatures in S, we can just think they're about similar value. Maybe one is slightly stronger than the other, but the idea is that they are stronger than others. Furthermore, it assumes all the creatures are fully awoken as well as having the same number of combo dots. So again, not many people have fully awoken legendaries. There are only a couple I feel that do, and it can be a little misleading because, again, a lot of these creatures only gain significant power and viability once they've been fully awakened. In addition, generally speaking, damage over time, or DOTS, area of effect, or AoE, as well as random target specials tend to be more lackluster. They tend not to really do enough damage to kill someone, because the idea is, with a Dungeon Defender, is you want to kill enemy creatures. In addition, anything with a relevant counterattack or passive from their awakenings is tremendously powerful because these take effect before they're able to take their turn. It allows them to possibly survive longer or become more threatening overall. In addition, the coloring of a creature is important to a certain extent because you have to understand what are the common dungeon offensive characters being used, and if you can somewhat counter those with your boss, it can be beneficial. In addition, one thing I want to stress is that if you own a 4-dot creature that is heavily awoken, it will often make them a lot more valuable than something that's ranked higher that has not been developed. Again, this tier list assumes everything is fully awoken. You have unlimited resources, which is sometimes not a realistic expectation. So again, take everything with a grain of salt. If you have, say, a B character who's heavily awoken and no one else, that B character is probably going to be your best Dungeon Defender for the most part. And last but not least, the current dungeon defense meta is presently now a 3-wave with either a Draconic Templar, a Light Elemental, or the Blue Drake if you're lucky enough to have them fully awoken. And for the most part, a 3-wave is almost always going to be superior than 5-wave unless changes are made in the future, so that also assumes that you only have one Dungeon Defender to protect yourself. Now, here is the tier list for June 27th, 2017. The idea is moving forward with every summoning event, I will have a tier list on hand to at least give you a little quick reference as to whether or not you should be summoning or not. Now, in S, we have Phoenix, we have Sandworm, Sphinx, Thunder Giant, and Oathkeeper. And it may be a little hard to see, well, you don't see it actually in the YouTube video, but if you go to my website, which will be linked in the YouTube description down below, you can mouse over each of the images and it will tell you what each of the creatures are. So for instance, when I hover over the rightmost card in S, it doesn't show on the YouTube preview, but for myself, I can see that this is the Eternal Phoenix. So you can basically know what the name of each creature is by at least hovering over it. So it does at least encourage you to go to my website. In A, it is the Ancient Blue Dragon, the Frost Giant, the Fire Giant, and the Chimera. In B, or Banana, is Stegosaurus, Forest Giant, White Mist Giant, Cloud Giant, VIP 8 Angel, the Abomination, or Purple Giant, and Vampire. In C, we have the Megalodon, we have Tiamat, Archdevil, Pyrosaurus Rex, because they're punny. We have the Cyclops, we have the Ancient Red Dragon, Medusa, Hydra, and then going to the next row is Titan Blade Master, Ancient Gold Dragon, we have the Grand Valkyrie, we have Archangel, we have next the Ancient White Dragon, the Devil, Lich, and then the Spider Empress. And in the final row of C, we have Ancient Black Dragon, Colossus Prime, Parry, and Minotaur Warchief. And then going into D, we have Ice Queen, Merid, Monkey King, the Baroness of Blood, we have the Ifrit Pyrolord, we have the Pyromancer, we have the Green Ancient Dragon, we have the Behemoth, we have the Archmage, and then there is the Genie, there is the Master Alchemist, the Shaitan, the Succubus Queen, as well as the White Lady. And in H, which is reserved for healers, which I'll explain of all the tiers in a moment, are the Druid, the Kirin, and the Astral Watcher. So this is the criteria list I use to rank all the creatures in there. Obviously some may be like a strong B or a weak A, and that's sort of the idea, like they may move up or down based on how things shift around. But for a creature to be ranked as S, these creatures essentially comprise the best of the Dungeon Defenders you have available in the current meta and the game right now. They have a very high potential to basically wipe and solo your entire team, even if everyone is up alive and your specials were actually ready, because they have either very high damage output, they have amazing crowd control, as well as possibility large amounts of sustain. They can self-heal and just keep surviving, killing off your creatures over time. So they obviously become even scarier when you are missing a teammate. So for instance, a lot of teams rely heavily on having someone alive. If like everyone alive, if someone is dead, you don't get the combo off, you may not kill them fast enough, and they'll start doing their specials, and then you're gonna have a bad time. So in essence, these creatures have the opportunity to at least completely turn the tide of battle. Like the Phoenix, Sandworm, Sphinx, Thundergiant, Oathkeeper, all of these when fully awoken have tremendous capabilities of completely wiping your team out, even if you had everything ready, just because they got their special off because they resisted your stun or crowd control. So they also may have innate tankiness to help them survive longer, which is important because they might just keep nuking you down to special, and just surviving long enough and you don't kill them in time. Next is A, and creatures that fall into A are still very powerful defenders, but they lack the potential to possibly wipe your team out as easily compared to the S tier. They may struggle against a full roster of creatures that are full health, full specials, but they still have at least the chance or opportunity to kill off enough creatures that it may actually result in the win, because once you start breaking down some of their team, they may not be able to actually defeat you in time. They may have some sort of sustain or damage mitigation, so they're harder to kill. And they are still very powerful because their special abilities tend to do enough damage to at least kill off a creature or two, and hopefully they can either stun or crowd control you or even heal up enough to survive to do another wave of specials, and then you start winning at that point in time. So even then, if a creature's ranked A, you still need to treat them with respect. They can be very powerful and dangerous. B tier creatures are definitely a noticeable step down from A, but they only tend to succeed for the most part if someone has died already, because when something is dead, it's more likely they're going to get their specials off, they have enough time to kill something. They may have possibly a little too low damage, so they may be more AoE based, or they're just purely single targets. So they may not necessarily kill something fast enough, especially if the whole team is alive. Like, it won't do enough damage to wipe out an entire team. It's just going to be either possibly a long grind, and for those creatures that are somewhat tanky, like the Forest Giant, for example, it's great in 5 waves because they'll absorb all your specials. There's enough threat that you have to keep throwing specials at him, but he has enough threat to basically, but doesn't have enough threat to wipe your team. So basically, if there was 5-wave became more meta, Forest Giant might move up because you can put Forest Giant first, then something scary right after, and becomes a very interesting wombo combo potential. But again, we don't have 5 waves because 3-wave is just simply better at this point in time. So they are still dangerous, but they only tend to shine when something has died already. In the C category, they tend to be somewhat lackluster as they often fail to kill something even if they get their special off. That's because their damage may not be necessarily high enough outside of being color specific and effective against. They may also possibly have some random target variance in their specials, so again, their damage is more split, and they just don't quite function well enough, but they are still a step up from the D category. For the most part, a lot of things have to be dead for C to actually be effective. And in D category, these are creatures that basically are the weakest dungeon defenders currently available outside of H, which I'll explain. But they're basically designed poorly for this role. They are often hybrid style creatures that have either off-healing or provide off-healing roles. They have buffs that they provide, which don't do enough usually. And they may have only some damage output. So they do some damage, they won't kill anything. They might do some weird, strange niche things. They're more hybrid cards. They don't really fulfill the role. Furthermore, they tend to either be very AoE oriented. So for instance, the Archmage and Monkey King are both very AoE oriented. It doesn't do enough damage. It's not going to kill anyone, unfortunately. Or they have lots of random targeting abilities. They're dot based. They're just not going to kill anything. It's really hard for them to really succeed because they have to have so many things going well for them to actually be effective. Furthermore, a lot of the creatures in this category are very squishy, and they tend to get knocked over by a stiff breeze or pretty much anyone in that scenario. And then lastly, we come to H, and the H tier basically represents pure healers who have no offensive capabilities. So when I do rank creatures later on, it's good to note that these H tier creatures will have some sort of like indicator that these creatures are designated as only healers. They only heal. They have no damage output capabilities. So I would rank them technically lower than D because they have no damage. Like, they're the worst defenders possible. But again, it's good to note that certain cards are definitely not designed for this whatsoever, and pure healers don't do that. So the Astral Watcher, Kirin, and Druid are all pure healers, so they don't actually work for dungeon defense. Now, this is hopefully a helpful tier list, but what I want to do is elaborate on certain cards that I feel could have been ranked higher or lower, or at least justifications for their rankings. So the Phoenix is S, and in all honesty, it could really be SS. Mostly because it is it is really the strongest creature in the game from pretty much every perspective. It's just fantastic in all points of view in terms of dungeon defense, offense, and PvE. It just does so much. It has amazing amounts of self-healing, it self-resurrects, does massive amounts of dot damage. It doesn't even need to be comboed to deal amazing amounts of pain. They also synergize very well because, for the most part, a lot of people would love to bring a cleanser to counter a Phoenix, but right now with totems taking effect in dungeon defense, as well as having very powerful Draconic Templars on floor 1, it's very hard to bring a cleanser all the way to Phoenix and survive. For instance, Siren will get destroyed by a single hyena appearing in anyone's dungeon, so it's very hard to actually utilize a cleanser at this point in time. So a Phoenix becomes more scary because it's going to apply its dot, kill off someone that's not a water card, but it will kill water creatures that are under 10,000 health actually, and it's going to be very hard to counter unless you can burst it down and then burst it down again. So for the most part, if you are missing your burst damage synergy, it's going to be very hard to actually kill a Phoenix because it can keep self-healing. It's going to apply that dot, like I said. So it is very powerful. It has very high luck stats, so it does tend to resist stuns and silences, so it's going to make your life very difficult. So I'm not going to make an SS tier, but just bear in mind that the Phoenix is the strongest dungeon defender at this point in time, but that also means there's a chance it might be nerfed because VCME does nerf things. They nerf Stegosaurus and Forest Giants, so Phoenix might be receiving a nerf at some point in the future. Also in S tier are Sandworm, Sphinx, and Thunder Giant, and this holy trinity of electric creatures, they have amazing damage output. The Sphinx will basically almost one-shot your team. Everyone is silenced. You're going to basically be basic attacking, then it'll do its special again, and people die. It's just a terrifying encounter if it gets to have a special cast off, which is kind of the requirements. If it's able to cast a special, you tend to lose. Same with Sandworm. It's going to stun your whole team and then go crazy town on it. It's going to keep stunning, doing bonus damage to stun creatures. It has a counterattack stun to do more. It will also self-heal on death blows. It's just a nightmare if it gets a special off. Thunder Giant kind of falls in the same category as well. It does AoE stun, high damage, but it's also a lot tankier, so it tends to also get its special off, so it's quite scary for the most part. And furthermore, all these creatures are yellow, and generally speaking, the only good wood creature at this point in time is Forest Giant. But Forest Giant got quite a sizable nerf, so he's still the best wood creature for offense, but he's not as powerful as he used to be. So these creatures tend to be a little more strong because a Borbarian on floor 1 has a strong possibility of killing the squishier Forest Giant. Oathkeeper is S, and it may seem unusual because it's not a common sight, but Oathkeeper, when fully awoken, is actually quite terrifying because he will hopefully be able to cast a special ability, and once he does, he gets a lot of self-healing, massive AoE damage, a protection buff which prevents further stuns and silences, as well as having damage mitigation when his protection buff is active. So if the Oathkeeper gets to cast a special, he is going to be nearly impossible to kill. He's become super durable, got lots of healing, can't really stun or silence him again, and he's going to start killing off your team very quickly. And that's why he is S tier. However, with that being said, he has to be fully awoken to really be terrifying. So again, if you see an Oathkeeper that's not heavily awoken, don't have to worry as much because all those perks and benefits only come from those awakenings. The Ancient Blue Dragon is A, and he could possibly almost be S, but the thing is, Ancient Blue Dragon has less threat than, say, the Sphinx Sandworm Thunder Giant. He does have AoE stun, but all its awakenings are designed to kill red creatures, and for the most part, the yellow creatures will kill anything that's water anyways, so the Ancient Blue Dragon, I guess, does shut down Phoenix, which is important. But again, when all of his awakenings are focused on killing something he already could kill already, it makes it so he has less room to kill off the 5 other elements. So he will be very scary and very terrifying with the AoE stun and heavy damage, but he's not going to kill off all the other colors as efficiently as, say, the Thunder Giant would. So that's why he's ranked lower in A. And lastly, we come to Chimera. And Chimera basically went from D to A because of their latest buff. But because they're somewhat relatively new and buffed, hardly anyone has them fully awoken, but the Chimera is actually very powerful when awoken because it has damage mitigation when they're poisoned. Its poison will one-shot something, which is obviously important. It gets one-shot something. It does modest poison to everything else. It's kind of like a lesser Phoenix. It doesn't resurrect, but it does have a lot of other problems that the Phoenix doesn't because he's going to be squishier. He does have the chance to self-heal when getting hit by a special, so there has the chance to survive. So he almost always will at least be able to cast their special to hopefully kill something off. But it doesn't heal itself like the Phoenix would. It doesn't self-resurrect. And it does have a damage mitigation component, but the creatures have to be poisoned beforehand. So unless you get really lucky with all your counterattacks healing himself and be able to poison enough creatures, it's going to be hard for the Chimera to fully wipe a team. So that's why it can't be S rank. But it's still a very strong dungeon defender if fully awoken. But again, not many people actually have their Chimera loved and invested in at this point in time. So in conclusion, tier lists should be taken with a grain of salt because, again, this is somewhat personal opinion as well as feedback from other notable community members. So this hopefully gives you at least a little framework as to what are the stronger dungeon defenders, as well as what to keep an eye out for when you are making your own offenses. If you see heavily awoken Phoenixes, it's a good indication that that dungeon is quite strong for the most part. So let me know what you think about this tier list. Where would you rank the cards? Would you have anyone ranked higher or lower? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, this article and posting will be on my website, which will have the mouse overs for all icons, so you can actually see what each character is. Hopefully you all have a fantastic day, and happy questing.